Boy, my friends, this gets curiouser and curiouser. This is Typhon, and he is being slain by Zeus. And here's his coils, his viper coils. He's portrayed this way and this. They said he was a hybrid creature. Now, I can tell that they didn't even know back then when they were doing this pottery what he looked like, because he had a dragon's head. He didn't have a human head. He had a dragon's head, and we're going to see that very, very clearly. Now, let's just look at what we got here. All right, there's Typhon, and here he is outlined. Now we're going to go look at him in the desert. All right, here he is again in the desert. Now, there's his throat, runs all the way down. This is all runoff from a decaying body. Now, coming out of here, he is attacking this fish. This is the reason I'm showing. I've shown Typhon 1,000,000 times. Okay, the reason I'm showing you this, I've shown the dragon 1,000,000 times. People know about it, that know about it, they can't miss it. They just cannot miss it. And it is exactly what Apollodorus wrote, that he when he stood up, his head brushed the stars, which would be correct to be twice as high as the space station. Okay, my friends, this is going to be fabulous. I wrote a book about Velikovsky and my disaster with academia, starting from 2010 or 2012, somewhere in that area. And the book was out in around 2015, 2016, January 2016, I think. And it tells exactly what happened from Velikovsky's point of view. And my mud fossils confirmed exactly what he said. And I'm going to show you some of them today that confirm it. Virtually all of my mud fossils are flat on one side, like this goose. This is a goose's head. There's his feather pattern right there on the back of his head. And it's flat on one side because they died laying like this in the flood. Now, Yale University, who I worked with since like 2010 or 2012, they finally did admit to it, and they put a paper out called Soft Body Preservation, or Perfectly Preserved Preservation in One Layer Worldwide from Saltwater Flood. This is exactly what it says. So we're going to look at what Velikovsky said. Now, this is David Talbot, Thunderbolt Projects. Now, this goes back to 2014 when he laid out his proposition for what Velikovsky said. Now, I knew what Velikovsky said. I always knew it, and it was in the back of my mind. I never thought that much about it other than, wow, that's interesting. But when I started to find the mud fossils, I said, they're right on the top, the surface of the earth. They're not buried. All of my stuff I just picked it up off the surface. And when you see what I'm going to show you, there is no big mystery here. This happened just recently, and Velikovsky was correct, and they destroyed him, absolutely destroyed him. And they try to do the same thing to me, but I can see it's not going to work this time because I have the evidence. See, this is Yale's paper in 2016, admitting to the fact that there was exceptionally preserved soft-bodied creatures, that's all that means, in the oceans. The whole Earth was covered by an ocean. It was a terminal layer, one specific layer strata, worldwide, that means everywhere. And all the creatures, everything was preserved in exceptional preservation. Yet how the fossils are preserved remains controversial. It's not controversial. I know exactly how. And they just recently tried to make some in my same style, using mud and forcing it and using heat. It was heat because of the almost impact by Venus. We'll get into that in a second. I explained everything to them, and they fluffed me off and then wrote this paper. Here it is right here. Rapid precipitation with high silica saturated oceans. That's it. This is what created my mud fossils. Thank you, Yale. See this? They tried to do the same thing I told them about. They tried to bake a fossil in 24 hours, and they said they could do it. Well, you can't do it in 24 hours. It's ridiculous. All right, here it is right here. They took various samples, lizard limbs and bird feathers, and they crushed them into clay tablets about the same size as a dime. They baked the tablets in a laboratory at 410 degrees with 3,500 pressure, PSI, a pressure 300 times higher than atmospheric pressure. They just thought they could force these molecules in. You can't do it that way. It needs to find stability with nucleophilic substitution. Shown it, done it, it's no problem. It just takes a little longer. You can't do it in 24 hours. Okay, Eric Reed, a friend of mine, sent me this link, and he said, take a look at this. It's got Velikovsky. I know he's your hero. Da, da, da. I said, okay, well, I'll take a look. It's from Thunderbolt Projects. Now, for some reason, I'm subscribed to them, but I never get anything from them. I never saw anything about this. Anyway, okay, this is Emmanuel Velikovsky. David Talbot in 2014 gave this speech about Velikovsky's research and our ancient past, which is not that ancient. All my mud fossils that I showed and I talked about, and Yale has agreed, my stuff is on the surface, on the top, sitting right out like this, on the top of the earth, a goose turned into stone, and one flat spot. Virtually everything I have has one completely flat spot. They all were invaded by what's a process called nucleophilic substitution, where all the water molecules and the metal cores dragging around what they call little ligands, their little attachments, they form stability. And then when they dried out, they just turn to stone. And it depends on what kind of liquid, what was in the liquid when they were being cooked. If they were cooked in blood, some of them really literally turned to opal. That's what the opals are, is from blood. And other ones, they had other minerals in them, and they turned to basalt, and some of them turned to, they look just like when they were alive. You see that? Watch, I put a little water on that, you won't already tell the difference. And they rehydrate almost instantly. Look. That's a guy's piece of meat. I don't know where it was from, but I tell you what, that's well marbled. Whatever it was eaten pretty good, it looks like to me. Now, all my mud fossils, and my stuff is DNA tested and CAT scanned and all that, so don't tell me it's not real. Velikovsky had all of the information that was written down. He knew, but he didn't have the evidence. I have the evidence now. And even he talks about Apollodorus. Nobody talks about Apollodorus. Nobody except him and me. Apollodorus wrote some stuff that just woohoo. This is what's killing the academics. Listen to this. This just is a mind blower. They're talking about Hercules and Hera. Zeus inspired him with lust for Hera, and when he tore her robes and would have forced her, she called for help. Zeus smote him with a thunderbolt, and Hercules shot him dead with an arrow. And as for the other giants, and it goes on and on and on, listen to this. When the gods had overcome the giants, Earth itself was enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon, who was the giant in the desert. He's a hybrid between man and beast. His thighs were the shape of humans, and he was so big that he outtopped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars, and that's true. His thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers, and they reached he was just gigantic. His body was all winged, and hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks. Fire flashed from his eyes. It's exactly what a Typhon is, and he's right there on the top of the desert. And he chased after the gods, and the gods turned themselves into animals to hide from him. This is... how can you even think along these lines of Apollodorus? But that's what Velikovsky was writing about, and then they just said, this guy's insane. And I would say that too, except I found that dragon Typhon. Not only did I find Typhon, I found giants, and they're DNA tested and bits and pieces or CAT scan, there's no question what I'm talking about is true. They're all on the surface of the Earth. They're not under the Earth. They're not 550 million years ago. This was, as Velikovsky said, everybody on the whole face of the Earth recorded it 3,500 years ago. Okay, I'm just going to recap what happened. I discovered the mud fossils 2010, 2012, let's say, in that area. I presented all my evidence to Yale, and they dismissed it. Well, I kept going, and I got DNA and CAT scans. Finally, in 2016, they wrote the paper saying, yes, exceptional preservation was promoted in these global flood. Worldwide, it says, yet how the fossils were preserved remains controversial. No, it doesn't. It was from the worldwide flood, and it was a hot water flood. So after I told them it was a hot water flood, and they were preserved because of this particular situation and the impact of Venus and everything, well, they decided they're going to try to make mud fossils. They figured it must have happened instantaneously. Well, no, it didn't. It happened over a course of time, and in different areas, the waters receded differently, and there was different minerals in different areas and different blood concentrations, which means there's going to be different types of rocks, even though they're the same body parts. A finger in one area could turn to opal. In another area, it could turn to basalt. It just depends on where the nucleophilic invasion happened, what's invaded. Basically, that's it. It's looking for stability. And it can find stability with a bunch of different ways. We're going to get into this very, very deeply. But they tried to do the same thing I did with the mud fossils, and they basically failed. This is it right here. They used hydraulic press to push lizard limbs and feathers and so forth into clay tablets, and then they baked them at 400 degrees for 3,500 psi, the pressure, and they created mud fossils in 24 hours. Well, and they look pretty damn good. No, they don't. No, you can't create mud fossils in 24 hours. But they tried. And this is how they're trying to resolve this confusion. I was first told, no, it's impossible. It can't, no, it doesn't, they don't preserve like that. You're a crazy person. Then I proved that they did. Then of course, we saw Yale agreed with it. It's the same thing. And now we see that they're trying to make the same mud fossils. And they figured that must have happened instantaneously. Well, no, it didn't. It took a series. Yeah, I made some, and it took maybe 6 months. They were, precursors. They weren't 100% mud fossil yet, but they were getting there. They were already starting to mineralize within 6 months. And I didn't even bake them. Boil them. Basically what you want to do is, to do this, boil something, but it has to have the blood in it and everything. Don't get something from the supermarket. There's no blood in it. You need to boil it with all the blood and the organs and everything else in it. And then after, I don't know how long you'd boil it for. I suppose maybe a week. Not even boiling. Just really, pretty warm, hot, so that it's not completely broken down, but it's not going to decay. All that stuff will run into the waters, and it'll just keep recirculating through until those organic molecules find some stabilizing mineral that's in that waters, and it'll cook, and then that's it. It becomes ready to dry out and become stone. And that's what happens. Once they dried out, they were stone. And they had flat sides on all of them. Okay, now, this is David Talbot from 2014. They just released it again a day or so ago. And it's this Thunderbolt Projects. And this is my hero, Emmanuel Velikovsky, who was destroyed by academia, just as they are trying to destroy me. They will not succeed this time. I have the evidence. Now, listen to what they have to say here.
His book, Worlds in Collision, published in 1950. In 1972, I began publishing a series on Velikovsky. It culminated in 10 issues that achieved a great deal of scientific interest around the world, and it was the #1 bestseller on more than one college campus. And this series on Immanuel Velikovsky Reconsidered led directly to a confrontation between Velikovsky and Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan is one of the most arrogant people that ever lived, and he was incompetent to a degree that is unbelievable. He assaulted my hero, Immanuel Velikovsky, who was correct and did the actual research. Carl Sagan, as far as I can determine, did no research whatsoever on this stuff and spouting off about everything. That's my opinion, that he's incompetent because of his statements. And I will show you that Immanuel Velikovsky was correct, and we can stand behind that now. And he is just very, very arrogant and nasty to a man that deserved respect.
In 1974, in February, in San Francisco, and this taught me a lot about the power of institutions to frame narratives. The question that science forgot to ask was never addressed. And that question is, have planets always moved on their present courses? Now, Velikovsky, as the centerpiece of his presentation in Worlds in Collision, he said, the planet Venus appeared in the ancient sky to people around the world as an Earth-threatening comet. What a preposterous idea. But he didn't pull that out of thin air. He based that on global testimony that identified Venus as a comet wearing all of the symbols and hieroglyphs and all of the stories that were attached to comets in the different cultures. You cannot ignore the power of that kind of convergence. Well, here's the toughest question, and that's the meaning of myth. Is there a meaning to myth that is completely obscure, completely forgotten?
Yes, yes, my friend, there is. And we're going to talk about it right now. And thank you for your presentation. People should come up here and watch and listen to the whole thing. It's time we go back to reality. I'm telling you, this is stunning. This is Thunderbolt Projects. And this is David Talbot. Now, it goes back to 2014, so this goes back a ways. Now, listen to what he has to say. I'm blown away. I'm going to tell you that right now. Listen to this. You know about Typhon, who was going to destroy, I mean, he was really a bad guy, dragon, gigantic thing. Look, listen.
And then we have, very closely connected with the dragon of chaos, we have a serpent figure that is so completely preposterous, there's no conceivable basis for the inspiration of the same features around the world. That's a huge mystery. Feathered serpent, long-haired serpent, fire-spitting serpent.
You see that? I've shown all of those things. I've shown all of those things. Preposterous, unbelievable size, but they're there. I'm a material scientist. This is a material world.
These are all ludicrous ideas, and yet there is one theme that I don't believe anyone has noticed in the conventional study of cultural themes globally, and that is the association of that serpent or dragon with a stairway to heaven. And this actually is an incredibly inspiring theme. And the details can be pieced together through the points of agreement from the ancient cultures. And what you will find is a direct convergence with the story that plasma science can give. Highest energy plasma discharge, producing the very forms that connect a serpentine upward spiraling form to a stack of toruses, a stack of toruses being exactly what was anciently identified as the stairway of heaven.
Yikes. All right, you know, they're talking about a stairway to heaven. There it is right there as far as I'm concerned. And what happens is as the particles push away from the most intense, where they're being held tight. They have to push hard to get away. And they push real hard and they push back. They push hard and push back. That's what these lines are. You push me, I shove you back. You push me, I shove you back. Boom, 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 boom. And there you are, or whatever that is. These are like resonance frequencies. You see how tight they are in the beginning? That's because I'm pushing you real hard, you're pushing me back real hard. That's the interface of the particles of the magnetic field pushing into the particles of space, which space is ether. It's just loaded with light particles, and light is particles. And I will show you them right now. I'll show you this one wave of them coming, and then a bunch of other waves out in the front. But I'll show you the black particles actually pushing the white particles out, just as you're seeing here. All right, I'm not going to get into it too deep, but this is nothing more than what we just saw with the magnetic fields. This is a pulsed laser, and this right here is where the black particles are pushing the white ones. The white ones are concussing and glowing because they have to push everybody else out of the way. Everything is push and shove, push to shove, push to shove, push to shove, and they just keep getting separated and separated more and more. That's really what the redshift is. Okay, I work with plasma, and which is light in its various phases of decomposition, and the entire solar system and universe is filled with plasma. Plasma science is, they're saying this is the stairway to heaven. Well, could this be the stairway to heaven right here? All right, right there. Could it be these magnetic fields that surround these various orbs that are in space? Could be. That's what these are. These are magnetic concussion fields. They look like stairways to me. I don't know anymore. Okay, I want you to stand by, get ready, because Michael Tellinger and I are going to be doing a discussion about his stone circles related to my research, and we're going to get deep, and because he's gotten a lot of information on this, not just about the stones and how many there are and where they're located, but he's gone into some of the anomalies that they create as far as magnetic resonance go, and I think I understand it. I think I do. So Michael and I are going to talk, have a Zoom, and I'll put a video up about it. I just talked to him just a little while ago, and I'm hoping within a week or so we'll be able to do that and get that done. And it's going to be exciting. I'm telling you, everything has changed. Everything has changed. Now the mud fossils changed the world, but our eyes just got to open up wider and wider and wider. People just freak out when you show them the sizes of these things. They can't believe it, and I don't blame them. But when you see the evidence supporting that proposition, there is no way to escape it. Typhon is the prime example, written down in history and totally visible. No question whatsoever is there. Okay, your textbooks are wrong. This is what light is. Light comes through here. This is a pulsed red laser. Light is light. Well, that is light accelerating. That is light actually dividing. Because light itself, the particle that you're seeing streaming forward here, is this particle right here. You see it? It is literally a particle, and when it smashes into the Venturi, which is right here, that particle, which was the black and white attached together, the two of them back to back, the black separates from the white and then reattaches here. That's fission and that's fusion. Nobody can deny that. And I can show it with green, I can show it with red.